be nice to finally see it
Seen so far on the smart grid policy aspect of this, we think is significant improvements, and we certainly think that that's an encouraging sign. Before, smart grid was treated something as money. There was one sentence in the bill without a comprehensive strategy and guarantees that this is going to be a plan to save consumers money. So we're encouraged that the smart grid policy section, some of the energy efficiency issues, that those have been improved. We still have issues, however, around some of the basic checkbook issues that this bill raises. The guaranteed profit rate for the utilities has gone down. We still think there's some issues that it's too high. I think that the performance metrics that we've seen in the bill, this becomes a key measure to hold the company accountable. They seem to be weaker than we would like. To give you an example, one of them is a reduction in estimated bills of 90%. Now that sounds good, but of course if you have a smart meter, really you should never get an estimated bill. You have to make sure that those performance metrics are strong enough that they hold the company accountable. So all in all, we see some improvements. We still have some concerns.
What is it that, if you're at home and you read this, among all of the other things that you read in the paper, see on the news, people only hear power bill going up. What else is it that people need to keep in mind when they read this or see this on the news?
Well, what you need to keep in mind is that the smart grid, if it's done right, is something that we think could potentially lead to big savings for consumers. Because the bottom line right now is what we need to do to keep power prices reasonable is to really increase energy efficiency investment, to really spur new developments in renewable technology, particularly solar and storage technology. And really a smart grid, you need that to be able to maximize energy efficiency. So we think that if the smart grid is done right, it's something that can ultimately lead to lower bills for consumers and environmental improvements. So that's why we've been cautiously optimistic about it. The key thing is, though, you have to make sure that there's a plan, that there are guarantees, and that there are strong performance metrics to make sure that the utilities are going to do this correctly, because they don't always have the best incentives. We want to make sure that whatever passes is focused on the consumer first.
That's when we have talked to people and we go out and we'll grab just some random person at the Capitol and say, hey, what do you think of this? Almost to a person, they always say, I never believe anything that Ameren or ComEd or any big utility. That's got to be a common reaction for a lot of people, and that's got to be a common stumbling block for this plan, is that people, Ameren and ComEd don't have the best reputation.
That's right, and they don't have the best reputation. They don't necessarily have the best incentives either. One of the reasons that we think the smart grid could be good if it's done right is that essentially, while it costs a little bit more on the distribution side, if it leads to an explosion of energy efficiency investment, it's going to reduce overall bills because the generation side is over 2/3 of the bill. But of course, both ComEd and Ameren are owned by generation companies, and that's where they make most of their money. That's why one of the things that we've been insistent on from the start is that if you're going to do smart grid, we need guarantees in the law. We need to make sure that the system's going to be set up appropriately, that there are going to be the right incentives, the right performance metrics. What we've seen so far on the smart grid policy aspect of this is encouraging. We think that this is a much better bill on that aspect than it was. That having been said, we still have concerns about some of the key regulatory issues, some of the key pocketbook issues around cost and holding the company accountable. So this is something that it's moving in the right direction, but we still have concerns, and we'd still like to see it get significantly better.
Last question, do you think that any of these changes are going to change the mind of the governor who had said he didn't like the original plan of House Bill 14, or of the Attorney General, who carries a lot of weight in these kind of issues?
Well, I don't know. I think certainly, I think most people would agree that these are improvements to the bill. However, the bill that started was. I think most people will agree that these are significant improvements to the bill. That having been said, the original proposal was extreme and radical, and it was really a terrible bill. So to say that it's improved, well, that's good, but is it enough? I just don't know. This is something that we're still analyzing. There's a lot of complicated factors here. There's a lot of details that you have to get right. You also have to compare it to the alternative of what happens if this bill doesn't pass. If this bill doesn't pass, then essentially all of these issues are kicked to the Illinois Commerce Commission, where you don't know how those are going to turn out. So it's really trying to weigh the pros and cons and see where we should end up here. Ultimately at CUB, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that consumers are put first. If there's a bill that passes, we want to make sure it's the best bill that it can be.